The problem with Farage, and I looked at this a little bit yesterday, I'll play a longer video from yesterday that I've edited slightly to make it more context friendly, is that he doesn't like humour at his expense. He talks about free speech and salutes free speech, but when it's a Joe Lycett joke that has involved the police, he mocks the waste of police time. When it's a joke at his expense, he protests. Like, for example, with the Joe Brand joke about battery acid. And, you need to hear that joke because it was, the BBC said it was deliberately provocative, as the title of the show implied. And Joe Brand was talking about Nigel Farage being pilloried with milkshakes. So the milkshake incident the other day was not the first. And she said, why bother with a milkshake when you could use some battery acid? That's just me. I'm going to do it. It's purely a fantasy. But I think milkshakes are pathetic. I honestly do. Sorry. That's what she said. And the clip was widely shared, and Farage was incandescent. And Victoria Coren Mitchell defended Joe Brand and said it wasn't intended to be taken seriously. And it's supposed to be a show that stimulates debate. All people should be free to make jokes about anything. And there was even a joke about the Holocaust in that particular show. But Farage isn't one for humour at his expense. His public persona and his reactions to satire and criticism often reveal a very thin skin. As Clive Dunn would have said, oh, they don't like it up 'em, do they? Clive Dunn, who died in 2012 and was and shot to fame in Dad's Army as Lance Corporal Jones. But Farage's complaint over the projection of Vladimir Putin's image led by donkeys illustrates his sensitivity. And the activist group projected this large picture. I'll play the video over what I was saying yesterday. Russia thanks you for your support. And the stunt was intended to criticize Farage's sympathy towards Russia and the claims made by Oliver Dowden. And Farage was very clever with Oliver Dowden. He says, well, what is it, Assistant Vice Prime Minister, or who's heard of him? Very true, very true. But the fact that Farage can make his own quips and put downs is interesting when he doesn't like them directed against himself. He tells the Germans to get a sense of humour, particularly in response to English football chants. But there's this discrepancy between his public advice and his personal reactions. He's been quoted as saying, come on, it's only a bit of banter. But you come back to the Clive Dunn thing. He doesn't like it up 'em. And have I got news for you? Farage expressed irritation over being mocked on that satirical news quiz, where his political actions and personal characteristics are frequently the subject of jokes, and rightly so. Comedians and satirists have that license. And his reaction to Russell Brand's criticisms and jokes about jokes during his interviews and public appearances, he's been very defensive, and he advises others to take jokes in their stride. He talks about ordinary people and tries to dismiss a lot of the offensive things said by Reform UK candidates and canvassers as just banter, or what ordinary people would say. It's not political Oxbridge speech. It's simply saying what ordinary people are afraid to say. Yes, or when they do say it, and when Farage is the target, he doesn't like it. Well, this is what I was saying yesterday. Hello, I need to make a small correction because I put a link to the stunt played upon Farage led by donkeys, where a picture of Putin was lowered onto the stage as Farage was making a speech. And I suggested this was something which was done in 2019, which is certainly where the link, certainly what the link suggested. I was slightly surprised to be reading a newspaper and find it actually done today. And it was done in Walton-on-the-Naze in Essex, and as he delivered his speech, a banner featuring a smiling Vladimir Putin with the message, "I love Nigel," descended behind him. And this was the stunt led by donkeys. So I think we have to make it very clear, all this is very contemporary. And Farage was quite taken aback by this and demanded to know who was responsible and called for the individual to be sacked. Because Farage, I mean, one of the points about this story, which I felt was being demonstrated, was Farage has no sense of humour. He didn't look very happy when he was sprayed by milk. Lactating isn't something he appreciates, but he could then laugh about it later when he's recovered. I don't think it's a good thing to have something, to throw something at a politician or a public figure at all. But certainly, Farage is far less inhuman by these events than, as I pointed out, Suella Braverman, who, when she was awarded the Dick of the Year award, she did seem to giggle and find it funny. She certainly took it in better humour than Farage. Farage looks absolutely fierce, and the audience reacting to the banner took up that spirit, pull it down, rip it up. The instant follows accusations against Farage of playing into Putin's hands. There's a lot of hand action going on here in this election at the moment. Maybe Liz Truss should add her competence to that activity. After Farage had suggested that the West provoked Russia into invading Ukraine by expanding NATO and the EU eastward, Farage said today that this is something that he was simply repeating from Kissinger, but Kissinger is dead and is in no position to confirm or deny that assessment. His remarks drew sharp criticism from key political figures like Rishi Sunak and Boris Johnson, who accused him of echoing Kremlin propaganda, because that is precisely what the Kremlin is promoting. It's precisely that we are responding to the aggression from NATO, from the EU, from Zelensky. Complete tosh. Complete and utter tosh. Twaddle. I can't think of any other words beginning with T. But Farage defends his stance, insisting that that he's neither an apologist for Putin nor supportive of the invasion of Ukraine. Well, the more he says that, the more maybe that message will be understood. And yet there are people making comments down here saying, I support Reform's position about the war started by Zelensky. What utter tosh. And rot. Zelensky didn't start the war. The war was started by Putin's invasion of a sovereign neighbouring country that had surrendered its nuclear weapons to the Kremlin on the understanding that the Kremlin would guard Ukraine, not invade Ukraine. On so many levels, this is an ethical and moral statement of depravity by Putin and his coterie of bigots and cheats. And people have died because of this nonsense. So I have no sympathy for those people who want to pander to Putin. None at all. And then they come out with these statements like, do you understand Russia? Do you know Putin? The answer is yes, yes. Well, I don't know Putin, but I've shaken his hand, and that wasn't a pleasant experience. So, no justification for Putin's actions at all. Led by donkeys, highlighted the stunt on social media. Gosh, I had to be careful with that word, didn't I? The stunt on social media, further amplifying the embarrassment for Farage and aligning with ongoing public and political scrutiny over Farage's inconsistent, controversial and completely contradictory statements, because Farage is in a corner and he knows that he doesn't have the intellectual or the moral capacity to wriggle out. And I trust somebody will follow up and make it absolutely clear that the statements he was saying about Andrew Parker the other morning, were contradicted by the statements that he then put out on the BBC. He said that he knew this man from way back when. There are other statements, apparently, that he'd exchanged telephone conversations with this man. In what sort of way? Telephone numbers with this man, in what sort of way? And now he wants to say he's now got his story straight. He's rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed. Not unlike Rishi Sunak. He's got his story straight. His story is that he only met this man when he walked into his office. I was there, he says in perfect Cary Grant imitation. And it's not true. It's contradictory. And none of the mainstream media are pointing out, even Channel 4, which did the original interview, is not pointing out the fact that Farage is contradicting himself about the timeline. And that is important. And nor is he saying, simply because this man was an actor doesn't mean he was a stooge. Simply means that he was an actor. Many people have jobs. Maybe Farage should look for another. I'm so disgusted with this man and with his attempt to lever his way, to inveigle himself into the House of Commons. It's a disgrace. He should be in the House of Lords, and he should be there to be held to account for the mess that he's created in our country.